Before we get to today's episode, don't forget to sign up to the book at thehighestandbestuse.com. That's where you'll find all of the links on where you can buy it. Amazon, Chapters, Barnes & Noble, all these places. You can get it there in ebook, paperback, and hardcover. So however you like to consume content, it is there for you. Now, on to today's episode. Thanks for tuning into the Highest and Best Use Real Estate Podcast, the show where we talk about techniques to optimize your land, structure, skill sets, and time, as well as the highest and best use principles to make your business more profitable, productive, and efficient. I'm your host, Ryan Carr, reminding you that good deals are found, great deals are created. And today, Darcy Marler is on the show. Darcy, thank you for being here.
Hello there. How are you guys? Thanks for inviting me. This is great.
I love the energy.
Yeah.
A couple things about Darcy. So, 20-year real estate vet, owning over 90 properties.
Yep.
Has a stake in a horse track and a casino.
Yes.
Okay, I want to know about this. This is really cool.
Yeah.
And you flew in all the way from Atlanta this morning via Toronto and heading back to Calgary just so you can make the show happen.
I was awake at 3:45 this morning to catch a flight from Atlanta to Toronto, and yeah.
Oh my God, you're the best.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here.
I'm excited.
So, for today's show, before we kick off, who you are, what you do, Hut and Radway, all this stuff.
Okay.
Development process. So the theme for the show today is the development process.
Okay.
Obviously, you're very well decorated. I would love to know how you think as a developer. Everybody does it different, and I'm sure you do it differently as well.
Yep.
So the before, the during, and the after of development is kind of what we are after today. Okay, so we'll talk about various themes throughout, and if you want to throw in some past projects, by all means, please do.
Okay. The horse track. We'll throw in
the horse track. Yeah, we'll start with the horse track. Who are you? What do you do?
Okay, my name is Darcy Marler, and I've been a full-time real estate investor for over 20 years now, and I've done everything short of building a 10-story tower. So all the different, flip spurs, rentals, long and short term, all that kind of fun stuff. I've done small, medium, and large development projects. I've built 45 new homes. I've written 4 books on real estate investing, and I've got a new land development course that I just came up with, and I'm loving it. I'm actually loving.
Amazing, and that's all. That's all you've done.
That's
in the last
all I've done
20
last 20
years.
years.
Just asleep at the wheel.
And built a racetrack.
And I built a racetrack. Okay, so let's kick it off there. Okay. Tell me about this.
Okay, so 20 years ago exactly, there's a bunch of horse owners in Alberta that decided that the Stampede grounds in Calgary wasn't good enough anymore. So we're going to put in lots of money. We're going to build something new. And there's a provincial government body, Horse Racing Alberta, that put it out for tender, and a bunch of groups bid. And the group that I eventually became, I wasn't involved at this point, but they won. Yeah. And then all of a sudden we got into the 2008 recession, and they started to partially build it and then ran out of money. And so 2009 they were in court pleading for creditor protection, kind of Chapter 11, and they were $108 million in debt. And I was brought in as kind of the turnaround guy, became the president. And
you're like, I got 107, but we'll have to raise the other $1 million.
So we go from court, we go back to the lawyers' boardroom, and we're having a board meeting. Yeah. And basically they said, okay, Darcy, I was development manager before that. We're going to promote you to president. We're $100 million in debt. Here's the keys. Don't screw it up anymore. So, okay, no pressure. So we got out of credit protection, and then we teamed up with a gaming company. We had to secure the land. So we did a sale and a lease back and then we're actually just buying the lease out now. This is 2015. We actually got up and running. So yeah, it took a long time, but
so that was an 8-year,
2009,
7-year.
So yeah,
process.
So 6 years to actually, when I first came on board, to when we were actually horses running around the track and people putting money into slot machines.
Wow. So how did you end up with a stake?
That was kind of my deal of I get it out. So I came in at, here's starting point A. Mm-hmm. We know where that was. We didn't know what B was going to be, right?
Yeah.
But if B was good, then there was a bonus there, and bonus was I got a certain percentage of the racetrack.
Oh,
so yeah, I own a racetrack.
That's
part
amazing.
Of a racetrack casino. Yeah,
that's amazing.
It is very cool.
And then the casino, that's part of the same everything.
It's the way it works is actually it's the casino and the slot. A certain percentage of slot income from races in Alberta actually goes to the Horse Racing Alberta, right? So you can't. You can't really have a track anymore without slot money or gaming money. They kind of need.
Does one support the other? Like, is it a finance thing or?
It's entirely one way. Yeah, the slots.
One way.
Yeah. Well, it used to be back in the day that horse racing was the only legal form of gambling in North America, right?
Really?
Other than you had to go to Las Vegas or Atlantic City to gamble, right?
Yeah.
And then in the 80s, they came out with bingo, and then in the 90s, 649 came out, and all of a sudden now, you've got all these different options. Mm-hmm. So you had a monopoly back in the the 30s, 40s, 50s with horse racing that went away. So the government said, okay, we still want to support horse ownership and horse breeding and horse training, and horse racing develops like $300 million of the Alberta economy kind of thing. So there's lots of small farmers and all that stuff. So we got to support that. So we'll give you some slot revenue. So
who owns the remainder? Is it the government?
75% of it is actually owned by a gaming company out of Austria called Century Gaming, and they're the ones that came in and supplied the money.
Interesting.
Because I'm sitting there with a smile, and horse racing makes money, and nobody would believe me, right? So this guy said, "Okay, we'll take a chance." And so they put in the money and we did the sale and the lease back, and so it was. There's a book in there somewhere, I'll tell you.
That's a pretty heavy duty deal.
Yeah.
Wow. Congrats.
Thank you very much.
That's amazing.
I teared up when I saw the first horses running around the track.
Such a long time coming, right? Yeah. You get tied to that.
Yeah.
Wow.
There was massive lawsuits and all. It was. Yeah. There's a good book there.
So how do you grow from an experience like that? Because this is very different than building a duplex.
Yeah. So we're really saving an industry, right? Because if we hadn't built this, there'd be no horse racing in Alberta today, period, full stop. Since that was kind of proof of concept, and then Century built another one in Edmonton. It's a nice, bigger, shinier one. So really you're waking up every day knowing you're going to hear no 5 or 6 times as you're looking for more money and looking to do this, but you also know you have to keep going because you're saving an industry, right? It's not just like a normal business that goes belly up, whatever. We're going to sell the assets for 10 cents on the dollar and go into bankruptcy and call it a day.
Yeah.
You're actually, there's farmers and horse breeders that are depending on this. Like, we got to get this working, right? So that was the pressure in the back of your mind all the time. I got to save an industry. Yeah.
So how do you identify a good deal outside of a racetrack or a casino? In general, with development, how do you identify a good deal? What is highest and best use for you?
So most of development, like we always talk about flips and rentals and real estate education, and nobody thinks they can do land development and construction because that's just for the big boys on the outskirts of town. But why? There's so many old houses. So highest and best use, first of all, is let's call it anything over 80 years old. So 1940s and earlier. If it's wood structure, it's past its best before date, right? So let's tear those down. 100, so call it 100 years from now, even brick.
Yeah.
Really? So that's physically it. But then even, like, they're so small, right? They're 700-800 square feet, right? And they're on these 50-foot lots. So that's a really inefficient use of space. So really, I'm saying let's come back in the inner city. And as average investors, you can do this too, right? Knock down old house, build a fourplex, right? We've got this housing crisis and new immigrants coming in. Where are they going to live, right? Well, how about we just get rid of some of these really nasty, ugly houses, right?
Start again.
So I sit there and say, okay, you've got a 30-foot lot or a 50-foot lot or a 75-foot lot, right? So let's say it's 230s. Well, what are you going to do? Well, you can only do up-down duplex or front-back duplex. Yep. But what if you knock on the neighbor's door, right? At the neighbor's door, other than that, if you can put together 150 feet, then that's interesting to a builder, right? Now, now I can do something with that, right? If it's 75 feet, I love being creative, right? So it's kind of you throw, what's all the options I can do?
Isn't that the most fun part?
I love this part.
Geez.
I hated the execution. Yeah. So I had close to 1,000 tenants. Yeah. Did all this stuff. I hated. It was a down day for me when I got the keys to the new place. Right. The fun part was over. Now I got to execute. I hated the execution part. But I love the hunt. I love finding the deals. I love being creative and planning it all out. So let's say it's a 75-foot lot. Can you split it into 2 37s and a half, or can you put it into 3 25s, If the zoning is already zoned for a duplex, for example, then as you create new lots, the new lots are going to carry the children get the same, right? So now all of a sudden, maybe I can do, instead of duplexes, I can do 6, right?
Yeah.
Whatever. Or maybe it's not wide enough to let me do 6. Well, can I make that one lot a little bigger? And then maybe I got 2. So kind of 2/3, 1/3. Or maybe I don't develop it or sever anything at all, and maybe I can put an 8-plex on there or something, right? Or maybe I can maybe I can do a garage in the back with carriage homes up front, right, or on top, right? So I just love that. There's literally 8 things I can do with this.
Yeah. Now
let's take it to a planner. Let's take it to a realtor. Okay, so the planner is going to say you physically can't do X, Y, and Z. Yeah. These are the 2 that make the most sense, and the realtor chimes in and said, this is the one that gives you the highest and best use from a revenue standpoint. So, Darcy, there's your next project.
Voila. And so there you go.
That's what I loved about that part right there.
Is density your number one motivating factor?
It typically is. So sometimes the play is knock down old house and build really, really nice house. And you can make a lot of money doing that.
Like take down a single, build a single, done.
Right. So I take down that 80 or 800 square foot piece of whatever.
Yeah.
And I build this 3,000 square foot mansion, right?
Yeah.
And that only makes sense in certain communities, obviously, right? But
Yeah.
there's a big lift usually from that. And that's typically what we've done as an industry in the past when it comes to kind of rebuilding the inner city. And that's why we're left with this housing crisis, because it's kind of a one-for-one trade-off. And
Right.
even a flip, unless you're developing a basement or whatever, is typically still a one-for-one.
True.
And so we let's talk about that for a sec. So you take a flip, typically that's in a lower middle income range house, and you're putting a lot of money into it. And now I'm selling it to upper end, right?
Yep.
So I'm depleting the lower middle class housing inventory.
That's a good point.
New stuff on the outskirts of town, again, middle class, upper middle class, right?
Right.
So as we hear this thing about the missing middle, we've kind of done it to ourselves, right? Because even when we've teared down that old house and we've built one new one, and it's a monster one, right? So nobody's building new stuff for the middle, and as investors, flippers and landlords, we've kind of screwed ourselves in that, right?
From an economics perspective, it's really hard to build something for the bottom end because it has to be multifamily or multi-unit to actually make that justify the cost of the dirt is fixed.
Right.
Like, how do you build an 800 square foot slab on grade bungalow now?
It doesn't make any sense.
You just don't.
Yeah.
Why do you think that's changed over the years?
I think the cost of land has gone up. So I'm in Alberta. My background's farming. I ran into some old letters from my grandfather in the 1940s. Back in the 40s, you could buy a quarter section, so that's 160 acres, and pay for it with the next year's crop. You could pay for it in 1 year.
Oh my gosh.
No way you could do that
With
now.
the next year's crop.
Maybe, bad year with weather and all that. Okay, 2.
Yeah.
So
Too funny.
So that's, so as the kids say, well, you guys, you were able to do all this stuff for support a family on this and this, we can't do that. There's some truth to that, right? So,
absolutely.
But it's but even taking it back another generation back to the 40s, like it was even crazy like that.
Oh my goodness.
So your initial question, tear down old house and build new. The other way to do that is density, right?
Right.
Because typically as a builder, let's say you're just developing the land, let's say inner city. I'm always talking inner city.
Yep.
For a builder who's going to be, you're going to sell to a builder, they're thinking, okay, I can afford to pay so much for the per new unit.
Right.
So in general, not always, but in general, getting 10 units is better than 8 is better than 6 is better than 4. So the more you can, and then plus, as we talk about I talk a lot with my hands.
I love it. I love it. You're so animated. And I just love, I can sense the passion here, which is truly fulfilling.
So
Please continue.
No, so that's the play. Like, so if you can get, and just with the housing crisis, like, we need to increase density, right? We got to we can't just urban sprawl, keep going out and out and out. Let's come back. Let's increase density. Let's increase inventory by knocking down old house and building something. So that's the great thing too, is typically as landlords and flippers, we think of the value being in the property or in the building.
Right.
What if we flip our mindset a little bit and say, no, what can we do to
the dirt,
highest and best use for the land? What do we have to do to bring up full value for the land? So
where do you find most of the money's made? In the dirt, the structure, the long-term hold? What do you think?
It's different. It depends, right? And I'll explain to that. So I did a project where I took 7 acres. I bought a 4-acre piece and a 3 1/4, and I moved them together. Mm-hmm. So I did land assembly, and then I changed zoning and density, and I was able to get somebody offered me a $400,000 profit just at that point. Yep. I decided I wanted to do the full-blown
take it the distance,
and I wanted to build the houses too, right?
Sure.
So this was I changed it from basically 14 units to 36. That's what the zoning and density changed, right? So I want to build these houses. It was for the plus 50 crowd. So I did, cleared the land, pipe in the ground, big earth movers rolling around, all these life-size Tonka toys running around, which is exceptionally cool. And then built the internal roads, curb and gutter, lights, all that stuff. Who knew there was different style of lights that you could, when you're designing the streets, you could actually have different lights. Who knew? And then I built the houses too, right? So I wouldn't do that. Like, I don't recommend my students do that.
Yeah.
Pick a lane.
Sure.
Do you want to make money just from doing upzoning, zoning and density change, and then sell to a builder. Do you want to do land assembly, that kind of stuff, right? So just the paperworky part.
Yeah.
If you want to do land development, pipe in the ground, perfect. Do that. And then if you want to build, buy land that's already serviced, already zoned, already density, because it just takes too long, right?
They're three very different businesses.
And they're very different skill sets and knowledge groups, whatever. But what happens is the end purchaser for land is going to be a builder, right?
Yep.
The end user, the end buyer for the builder is going to be the person that lives there. If you're doing both, now you're selling to the end user. Yes, you get a deposit, but that's a long way to bridge finance-wise. Like you get stuck in the middle. It's cash flow is a bitch in the middle, right? Yeah. So pick a lane is kind of what I say. So that was everything I have in my books. Everything I have in my course is hard-fought knowledge. I wrote a check to somebody after I screwed up. I used to be a computer guy, and I always say, a couple of times I actually hit the wrong key and deleted data, right? So I'm staying late that night for free, to fix it, right?
Yeah, sure.
In flips, in landlording and development, if you make a mistake, you're writing a check to somebody to fix everything.
With a few zeros attached.
So so that's a lesson learned. Let's not do that one again. So hard-fought lessons along the way.
So given your position, knowing that you don't want to be a landlord, would you say the majority of the money is made in the dirt and the zoning?
I would say, so back to that. I get rambling, and I tell these stories.
It's so good. I'm enjoying this thoroughly.
I gave my first live talk to a real estate investing group a couple of months ago too, and after COVID.
You're so well spoken. That was your first talk?
No, live.
Oh, live.
Everything's been first in 2 years, I guess is what I should have said. Anyway. Okay. And I was asked the question, if you had to do that thing over again, what would you do? Oh, Christ, I'd take the $400,000 and run. I would just go.
See ya.
So, and because what happens is realistically, there's more and more people with their hands out as you go along, right? Like to build a building, there's 50 trades and material suppliers and whatever, right? To put some pipe in the ground and build a road, let's say there's 10, right?
Yep.
So, and it gets, so the further you get, it's everybody's got to make their 10 or 15%, and everybody's got to leave something on the table for the next guy.
Yep.
So, I love now where I'm at now. I just love the in and out quick strategies is what I'm calling them, right? So again, that's what Alberta teaches you too, with the up and down and up and down.
Sure.
We haven't had 25% growth for 6 or 7 years like you guys have.
You guys are predicated on oil, like the price of oil and stuff like that, right?
Not so much anymore. Like in the 80s, it was like 35% of GDP. Now it's down to 18.
Okay.
So I'd like to get out there that we're not as, because everybody kind of just, but we're not as bad as we used to be. There's a lot more high tech now, a lot more.
Really? I didn't know that.
Innovations and food and all that kind of, and we got some pretty cool industry. Actually, part of the last 2 years, I was consulting for this farm that was doing farm diversification. Yeah. So the patriarch passed away. The kids didn't know what they were doing. They were a grain farm, and they were actually, I met them through the racetrack. So they were the largest thoroughbred horse breeder and owner in the province. So dad dies. Oh my God, the grain makes money. The horses lose a lot of money. What are we going to do? Fires everywhere. So they brought me in after the success of the racetrack, and we've got them. We've brought down the number of horses, which freed up a really state-of-the-art barn and some infrastructure that they got, and now we've got them into fish farming. We've actually got a state-of-the-art fish farm there. Cool. We started growing hops for beer, and then we're just putting together a mushroom farm for like oysters and shiitake and all that. Yeah. So full diversification. So that's Alberta.
There's the highest and best use.
Yeah.
Fish farming.
So there's still like 100 acres of the 160 that we could do something else with too, right? So greenhouses and all this stuff too. So that's what I love. I love the creativity part. What can we do? And then I got an accounting background too, so how does the money work on that? And so, but I love this is everything we can do. What makes sense.
That's the best. That's what I love. Let's go down the path of land assembly. So you mentioned land assembly a little bit earlier and accounting. So let's merge the two. Where's the money in a land assembly and how does it work?
Typically, I find that the land assembly is builders in general, two things. Okay, builders in general want to build. They don't want to deal with paperwork. They don't want to deal with
bricks and sticks.
I don't want to deal with city hall. Okay, so there's value add for smaller investors. What can you value add, right? So I've got a 50-foot lot. I can build, depending what zoning you are. Like aggressive zoning now is really aggressive zoning on a 50-foot inner lot is 3 up and 3 down.
Right.
And but they're skinny, right?
Like a townhouse type of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. 2 up, like a two-story with a suited basement.
Yeah.
And I'm older, I wouldn't do it, but younger kids, they don't mind. They can live there, whatever. It's so good for that. But the other thing too is you can buy that entire sixplex as an investment, or you can also sell it to a younger couple, because then it's they'll take one of the up-down duplexes, and then they've got a mortgage helper in the basement, right? Yeah. So that's a really good investment option too. So if it's a corner lot, maybe you can get 8 on that, right? So again, it depends where you are and kind of what density you can get out of it, right? So that's a 50-foot. If I got 25 or 30, as we said, not much you can do with an up-down duplex, front-back duplex. But if you get the next one over, now I can put more land together. And that has value to a builder, right? Because builders in general want as much land as they can get.
Okay.
And only the real large areas are available on the outskirts of town, right? So if you can provide them with as much land as possible in the inner city, that's a value add. That is value, right? Because now I can do a 10-plex, I can do whatever, right? I can still do side-by-side townhouses, I can do a little mini apartment building, there's options there, right? So the more of these you can structure together. Just down the street from one of my recent builds was this group. They put together literally a 7 side-by-side old 1950s houses, tore them all down. They're putting a monster like 100-plus unit apartment building there now.
Ooh.
Kind of wraps around the corner and a whole deal. Like, it's massive. So that's an example of value add, right? And so now they're willing to pay more to you as the in-between person that put this thing together, because now they know I can. So the more you can put together, the better you are.
Does it multiply? So if you take, let's say lot's worth 300 grand, right? And if you put 3 of those together and you get a bigger parcel, does that mean you have a lot that's now worth 900 grand?
No.
Or does it double? Does it triple? How does that work?
Location gets into a lot, right?
Okay.
So I can do that in a crappy neighborhood, and it's nowhere near worth as much as it is in a better neighborhood, right? So you still kind of always go back to location. And it's funny too, builders, what I always kind of teach my clients or my students is that your first homework is to go meet some builders, like go and talk to 5 or 6 builders. What do they want, right? Because here's an interesting thing. So you can, like I said, just change the zoning and paperwork. The next thing might take that old 1930s house, knock it down, subdivide the 50-foot lot into, make sure both are serviced, and then you sell that. Fine. Yep. The next step might be, okay, let's say the end use is going to be a 4-plex. You can get an architect to actually design the 4-plex, get the building permits approved as well. Now you've got a full shovel-ready package to handle to a builder, right? So these are called the micro-strategies of land development, a term I've coined, and that's kind of what I teach. I talked to 3 different builders, for example. Does that add value to you if you had the full building package? One said yes, absolutely. The second one said no, I don't really want that. The third said I'm only interested if I get to design it.
Oh.
So
interesting.
Again,
depends on who your buyer is, right?
So what's it worth? Your question, what's it worth? It really depends. It depends on your town and your area and the whole bit and how it is. For example, let's say you're in a place that takes 2 months to get a development permit approved, right, and some rezoning changes, because across this country it goes from like 2 to 3 months all the way up to 2+ years, right? So
Ontario, very, very bad, very, very slow.
Some places are not bad. So let's say Ontario's on average is 8 to 14 months. You've got your Torontos, which are obscene, and Vancouver and Victoria. But let's say it's 8 to 12 months. If I'm a builder, I'm in a place where it's 2 months. Well, then you don't have much value, because I can buy the land and I can tell my civil engineer to go do it, right?
Go do the thing,
The benefit there, and I'm always talking about turning positives into, or negatives into positives. The value add there is for you to go build. So if you're the type of person, I don't want to do the paperworky stuff, I don't want to do the servicing part, I just want to build. Perfect. I can, in 2 months I can get building. Contrast that to the Ontarios of the world, which is 8 to 14 months. Okay, now I'm a builder. We said, they don't want to do the paperwork part. Now there's value add for you. If you can do that 8, 12 month, 14 months behind the work, paperworky part. And it's not that hard because your team's doing all the work. Really what it is, it's a hurry up and wait, right? You submit some paperwork and the city gets to it. 3 months from now, they get back with some questions and we need this and this. You rush around to get that for them and then wait another 2 months, right? So there's a lot of hurry up and wait.
That's right.
But you as an investor, your team's doing all the work, your planner or civil engineer. So really, I find these MicroStrategies are really, really great return on time.
Yep.
Which I don't think we talk about enough in real estate. We're always talking about return on investment, but
Please.
as you get old, you kind of, if you're doing a flip, you're on site every day and then you're driving around. I literally went to Rona every day at least once for 17 years, right? No, let your team do that, delegate that. Anyway, so basically, so turn a negative into a positive. So in the places where the development permit is quick, then you do the on-site stuff.
Right.
If it's long, then the value add is, the builder's quite happy to pay you a premium.
And you're saying that just because time to market is so laborious, people don't want to have 3, 4, 5 projects if you're a builder in the development phase because that's not your thing. Is that what you're saying?
Traditionally, builders, and I'm not saying this in a bad way. Traditionally, builders construction guys are a different breed.
Right.
Right? Like, they're manly men, and yes, women are involved now too, but for the most part, they know what they want to work with their hands. They don't want to do paperwork. They don't want to do math. They don't want to deal with that behind the scenes stuff, right? And if you're a project manager, the actual owner of the building company, again, you want your people working, right?
Right.
So it's value add to you to just, okay, Ryan's an investor. He does this and this, and I know 6 months from now, 8 months from now, he's going to give me a shovel ready package. Perfect.
Where we go. Build it.
Here's. Now what that's worth. I don't think there's a straight formula or an algorithm. It depends.
It'd be location specific.
Builder specific. And here's the other thing. I talked to those 3 builders, and they said, it depends who you use as that architect too, right? In this, right? Because this guy, I know he's kind of still older style that isn't selling now.
Yep.
I want this guy to do it because he's up to snuff, and I know his stuff will sell better.
Right. Like from a design perspective.
Right? So that thing where, get the architect to actually design the fourplex and then, right? So there's so it's not hard. It's not easy, but it's more paperworky and checklists and administrative when people say, and if you've heard horror stories about development and all that, it's probably because you're in one of these municipalities where it takes 2 years to do something, right? So as investors,
I've had land division applications that have taken 2 and 3 years.
Yes.
Insane.
Right.
Like insane.
So, but be aware that that's not universal.
Yes.
So there's lots of places that are better than others. Right?
I hear places in the States are like, 2 weeks, we'll rezone.
Yeah.
I'm like, 2 weeks?
Yeah.
My God. That's crazy.
I use the analogy of Vancouver Island.
Right.
So Victoria's awful. In every way. It's a beautiful city, but God, City Hall's awful. So it's 2 years to do anything there. An hour down the road is a place called Langford. They take 2 months.
Yes.
Parksville and Qualicum are about 4 to 6 months. Nanaimo is 8 months. Souk is about a year. East Souk is a year and a half kind of thing. So literally across the highway or 50 minutes down the road, totally different scenario. Same thing here in Ontario.
Yeah.
Just so if you're, oh my God, I'm hitting my head against the wall because this municipality is just awful, then don't be there.
Why do you think this is? Why is this? Is it a human nature thing? Is it politics? Why? Why the change?
A lot of it is politics. So in general, the more progressive the town, the more rules there are. Because in general, the left likes rules.
Right.
And when you have rules, well, now somebody has to do the administrative of them. So we got to hire more people. And then somebody's got to inspect them and enforce the bylaws. So it just grows on itself, right?
Right.
Part of it's greed. I remember there's this magazine, or actually a newspaper, used to be physical, now it's online. It's called The Western Investor, and it was been there since the 80s. And it was talked about mostly BC, but also Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba, right? And so they'd say what was new and all this stuff, and there was, the editor would give an opinion. And I remember specifically early 2000s, the flippers in Vancouver were just making way too much money, according to the city.
Right.
We'll fix those guys. So they massively increased the fees. And I remember because I remember reading the opinion of the editor of the paper. He was just went off on him. And so now, I've heard different things, but somewhere between 40% and 50% of the cost of a new condo in Vancouver is city fees, permits, inspections, and all that, right?
Wow.
Almost 50%. And then they sit there and they wonder, well, why is
We don't have affordable housing.
Why do we have, why nobody's building affordable housing,
Yeah.
So there's a cause and effect. If you're listening and you're part of the bureaucracy, there's a cause and effect.
That's
so,
right.
Yeah.
Well, like when you take all the fees and the bricks and sticks and the labor and the time, and somebody has to make money on that to actually make it worth their while.
Right.
You can't do it any cheaper. It's just what it is. It's math.
Yeah.
Math.
And you're carrying a cost. So, if it takes me 2 years to get a permit, now I got to cover my insurance, utilities, and mortgages and whatever taxes and employees or whatever for 2 years, right?
Yeah.
So that I got to make sure I got funding for that, and that costs money and that costs interest. And so it all adds up, man.
Just a quick break mid-episode here. Thanks for tuning into the podcast. Don't forget to sign up to the book, thehighestandbestuse.com. You can find it on all the major platforms, Amazon chapters, Barnes & Noble. You can get the direct links at thehighestandbestuse.com. Now, back to the episode. Supply and demand. So let's go down this path. So obviously we have lots of immigration here in Canada. A third comes to Toronto, a third comes to Vancouver, and then a third kind of gets sprinkled around. If that is the case, in terms of supply and demand, how do you think that's affecting the current state of the real estate market here in Canada? Broad, right? And then maybe go granular for a few specific markets that you know. So
in general, people go, I agree, Vancouver, Toronto, Montreal. If the economy's flowing, they come to Alberta. We had net out migration for the past 7 years in Alberta, just as an example, right? And so everybody's coming just to the three, right? Now with our good Prime Minister opening up the gates again, lots are coming to Alberta because it's half price.
Right.
Because we have cheap land and urban sprawl, and we just kept going out instead of up, right? So anyway, but what happens again, supply and demand. So you've got, I always say that I think land development and new construction are going to be the next big things in the next 10 years for real estate investing.
I agree.
Because of this, because you got 500,000 Canadians coming a year, you've already got a housing crisis, but now you've got all three levels of government trying hard to increase density and inventory. Sometimes it's a step and a half forward and a step back, but for the first time I can go on rants about government. For the first time in a long time I see some real progress there. But the other thing is that adding to that is the younger generation that's renting and buying doesn't want old. They no longer want to live in that 1930s bird place. Before, they didn't have a problem with it. The 1950s fixed up place, right? Yeah. I'm completely out of rentals now. I sold everything. It just brought me no joy. I hated it. I didn't have any joy with that 1,000-tenant journey. Yeah. But most of my inventory was 1980s bird, right? 1980s fixed up. Yep. The last 5 years or so, I couldn't compete against the brand new fourplex down the street, right? What happened in Alberta because of the net out migration? Well, who's buying these things, right? Well, it was actually cannibalization. They would steal buyers from older houses, or they would steal renters from older stuff too, right? So all of this is coming together with supply and demand. That's why we're short something like 5 million housing units in this country. Well, the big boys in the outskirts of town can only do so much, right? Yep. That's where the opportunity is for smaller investors to sit there. If you're tired of flips and rentals, if you're tired and bored of tenants and renovations and all that, this might be what you're looking for, because now I can tear down that old house,
the infill stuff,
and I can build for, right? And I can help. Supply and demand. It's just like any business. Find a need and fill it, or find a problem and fix it. There's a massive demand and no supply. So as smaller investors, we can do our bit to just create land. Again, the values in the land. Even if it's just the paperworky part, up zoning, changing zoning and density, or merging 2 or 3 lots together, or if I've got an extra large lot, what can I do with that? So it's just being creative and coming back to the inner city, because people want to live close to the downtown.
Right. The amenities and the transit and all stuff.
There's people that want to live on the suburbs, fine. But
Yep.
in general, you want walkability, you want the existing schools, you want the tall, mature trees. There's lots of people that love that, right? So there's a market there to provide new product in an older neighborhood.
Return on time. You mentioned return on time. Let's go there.
Yeah. So basically, everything I teach is just, like I said, not only is it hard knocks, me writing a check, but it's me going to Rona every
It's
day.
the worst use of time. It's so bad.
Yeah.
It's so bad. Standing at the till and finding good lumber, and they don't have any stock on the nuts and bolts that you
sitting
want.
there leaning, looking down every 2x4. Is that
so bad.
straight or not?
It's just so bad.
So you go down, so you're flipping, right? And doing a lot of it yourself, or not yourself, you got your trades, but you're still organizing it, right? So, okay, you go down first thing in the morning. Oh, shit, the drywall didn't show up today. Now what's that going to do to me? Okay, then you spend most of the rest of your day driving around town looking for material, organizing, negotiating a price for an entire truckload of drywall, for example. What's that? Going to City Hall. Maybe I go to an auction so I can pick up a cabinet set for cheap, right, or whatever, right? Get home, you're exhausted, you have supper, play with the kids for a bit, and then you got paperwork for the rest of the night, right? And then you do it all again tomorrow. I was deeply depressed 2017, 2018, because I hated being landlord guy and I hated being on-site supervisor guy, right? Again, I loved the part up to the handing over the keys, and then I hated the execution part. But 95% of your day is the execution part, right? So finally I just said, no, enough, right? Had enough of tenants, had enough of Rona. Let's delegate that, right? So that's the return on time, right? Because again, you're busy now at the front. You're finding the next deal. You're finding the opportunities. You're making sure you're in the right communities and municipalities. Because even if you're in a forward-thinking city, like let's say Edmonton, for example, there's still communities within that where the NIMBY crowd kind of rules, right? So you've still got to make sure you're in the right place. You got to figure out the need is. You're putting your team together. You're putting money together, right? So you're busy up front. At a certain stage, though, you hand off to the planner, the civil engineer. They're going to do the back and forth with the city, put the plans together, whatever. If you're actually doing one of the micro-strategies where you're actually physically doing stuff on site, like actual land development or actual building, then you're going to delegate that too, right? So your better use as an investor is being an investor, right? Let the professionals do their bit. And that's the return on time. So it's going to take 6 months, 8 months to do this, but I don't care because I'm not really doing I'm paying attention.
Yeah, sure.
If there's a meeting at City Hall, I'm going to show up. But way less time spent on this than a traditional flip, or if you're doing that yourself, and a lot of people are.
Right. Well, it's true because for return on time, when you're doing land development, you actually don't even have the option. You have to hire a licensed surveyor. You have to hire a lawyer. You have to hire an engineer with a stamp. It's not like you can just backyard this thing together yourself. Right. Whereas if you're a flipper, you could figure it out. You can paint your own walls and lay your own floor.
And the drywall that didn't show up today, okay, or the tile again. Okay, well, I guess I'm laying tile. I guess I'm laying tile today. And that happens a lot, unfortunately. But yeah, so let's say I tear down an old house and I'm going to divide the lot into. The utility already exists for the one lot because the house was there. I have to put in the new utilities, right? So that means a company's going to come in and dig a trench to the middle of the street, tie into the city mains. Well, the city doesn't allow just any Tom, Dick, and Harry plumber to do that, right?
Can you imagine? Dave's on a backhoe today, ripping up the road.
So there's a small list of you have to use those companies, right? And so that's the world, right? So yes, and don't be on-site supervisor guy like I was.
That's right.
Don't be lone wolf guy. Just let professionals do their stuff and incorporate that in. Okay, so that's going to cost another 12%.
How do margins affect these decisions, by the way?
I would say that margins either they get so high that it doesn't make sense anymore, or what's happening now is, let's say there was a massive run up in costs. I'll just again pick Calgary or Edmonton. I had some students that actually were finding some really good opportunities in April, and they actually bought the property and whatever. Since then, there was a large run up in material and labor, right?
In cost.
The builders. So the builders' cost went from $180 a square foot to $220. Right? Okay, so now that doesn't make sense. But I'm sitting there saying, okay, but the builder's cost is still only $180, right? Okay. Because they're adding 15% for you, right?
Sure. Okay. So you're saying the market didn't push, the market material pricing didn't push? The builders just wanted more?
No, it definitely built. But what I'm saying is their cost before was, let's say, $140.
Okay.
Right? So if I want to partner with a builder, I'm just going to hire a builder. They say, Darcy, I'm going to charge you $220. Okay, well now my project doesn't make sense, right? But their internal cost is still only $180, right? Okay. So it makes that sense for them. So you can just sell, you can do the paperwork part and sell the project for them, and it still makes sense for them.
Right.
So what got taken away temporarily is the ability to build it myself. So your question, how does that affect it? It creates sometimes, or it takes away opportunities, right? And that's basically what I teach is basically it's all about opportunities, right?
Yeah.
So right now, in the flipper and landlord world, you roll up to an old house, that 1930s house, let's say, I can fix it up enough to flip it, or I can fix it up enough to rent it.
Right.
Couple of variations. Maybe I can do rent to own. Maybe I can do Airbnb. But really, who's coming in halfway across the world on a vacation to stay in a 1930s renovated? Probably not. So you got 2 or 3 options, right?
Yeah.
Now you run up on that old building. I still got that. That hasn't been taken away. But now, can I change the zoning and density to get something higher?
Mm-hmm.
Can I appreciate the land? Can I take out the old house and divide it and put the things in and sell that? Can I get the architect to do his bit and get the building permit? Can I knock on the next door? Okay, this was a nice big lot. What can I do with that? Can I knock down the house and build? So instead of having 4 bullets in the gun, I give you 15 bullets in the gun, right? Which would you rather go
Pick
into a
which one will
gunfight?
hit, yeah.
And then that's on the way in. But now if you run into trouble, now you've got more exit strategies on the way out too, right? Because before, okay, I'm going to flip this thing. Oh, crap, I can't. Option B is I'm going to rent it for a while.
Right.
Those are your only options.
Yep.
But now if you're doing this other stuff, so like I said, so the one lady, she's going to sell her land. Instead of building, she's just going to sell it to a builder now, right? And another person was looking good to do the whole thing, and then the interest rates went up, and so now her mortgage got screwed up or whatever. Yeah. But now she's, okay, well, I've already done... change the zoning and density. I've already got the building permit approved now. Now I've got something worth more than what I had when I started, right?
Yeah.
So take the single instead of trying to hit the home run. Right? So
where are you finding these opportunities? So if you go to the market and you say, okay, I want to do X, Y, Z, where do you start?
It's in how to find it. Again, you said off the top that profits are made, not found, right? Mm-hmm. So you have to think out of the box. I was a RAIN member for years. I never heard the word zoning mentioned once at a RAIN meeting ever.
Yeah.
And so get to know what zoning is and how it works, and not only that, but where, right? And so again, picking the right municipalities and communities, and even what are they looking for? What do they need, right? Because often, just because you want to build an 8-suite apartment building doesn't mean the city wants it or needs it, right? So what do they need? So there's needs reports, talk to realtors, what's the market missing kind of thing. Where can I add value? It's about adding value, right? It's about being creative and adding value to the builder so that he'll want to buy from me instead of trying to do his own stuff, right?
Yeah.
So, some of that is just creativity, right? So I can, another one I did is I tore down 2 houses and I built 4 new ones. Mm-hmm. And I wanted a 3rd level. I wanted a loft in one because there was a beautiful view of downtown. Yeah. Right?
That the view is like the hidden gem, eh?
Right.
When you can get a nice,
But it went over the height restriction, right? And they wouldn't move on the height restriction, right?
No variance, no
variance. They just wouldn't move. No, that's it. Too much pushback from the people. But I wanted that height, right? I didn't want a 2-story. I wanted a 3-story, right? So instead of having a full 3rd story, we did a loft.
Yep.
And so there's a door leading out to the balcony. The roof is literally as close to that header as you can physically get. Like it's and then we sunk the whole building down, so there's not even one step up, right? Yep. We made it enough so that if it rained, water still flowed away, but it was as low as that could go, right? Well, now the bathroom in the basement wasn't high enough. It was below the city main, right?
So you're into a pump.
So now we have a lift station, right?
Yeah.
But for the cost of a special door that had, both the roof, the loft door and the main door had a special sills, really, really low sills.
Yeah.
An extra $200 per, $300 for a lift station.
Yeah.
I added $100,000 to the value of that property
because of the view.
Yeah. For the cost of $500.
There's the highest and best use.
Highest and best use right there, right? So that's kind of what I talk about is creativity is what can you do to add value. So now let's say I wasn't going to build that. Well, now the builders that I sell it to is going to be willing to pay me more for it because now he knows he can get an extra $100,000. You can do that.
Yeah.
Right. So is there an extra $20,000-$30,000 in it for me? Probably. Right.
Sure.
So that's kind of where creativity can really come in.
Any other stories like that?
Oh, I got.
Give me 3.
3.
I don't know. Give me 3. I can't go too deep. I mean, you'd be here all day.
Yeah, no, I had, actually, this wasn't a new construction, but this was a flip I did. So
Yeah.
I had an older house. I had 1910. This was when I was fix it up Darcy, not tear it down Darcy. I would have torn that building down. Anyway,
Yeah.
so we had this 1910.
Isn't it funny how you change over the years? You evolve.
Just life teaches you so many things.
Right.
Anyway, so it was a piece of crap, right? It was a boarding house. It was the guy had owned it for years, and he had no mortgage, so he didn't care, right? So it was actually drugs and prostitution going on. Rents were like $300. And this was 20 years ago.
They were paid cash.
Yeah.
Those rents were paid cash.
And there was drugs all over. Anyway, so he died. The kids could not get rid of this place quick enough, right?
Geez.
And here's another tip. The realtor listed it in land. Because they just thought, well, it's only for land value. And it was.
Yeah.
But it was such a skinny lot that with setbacks and everything, you couldn't build anything on it, right? So it sat on the market forever because everybody, that's a great location. But you couldn't do it. So, okay, so, Fixer Up Darcy came along and said, okay, well, I'll fix this thing. Anyway, so the line in was built in 1910, right? So the line in was super, super skinny, right?
Yeah.
The pipes inside weren't that bad, but pressure was horrible because there was no water coming in. Okay, so instead of spending $20,000 to dig into the street and put new 2 lines in and all that, I spent about $5,000. I put in 2 250-gallon tanks in the basement.
Yep.
With floats, and it's what's called the trickle tank.
Sure.
So
it just pumps. They use that in well systems also. Yeah.
So during the day, water flows in like normal through the skinny lines, fills up the tanks. You come home, you're showering, whatever. It draws off. There's a pump.
Yep.
And the pump is pushing the water at normal flow rates through normal lines in the house. So everything was good. So I saved $5,000 there versus spending $20,000.
Yeah.
So again, just creativity.
Interesting.
Of how you.
That's very creative. I've never heard that on town water, but that's interesting. If you got a basement that's underutilized or a hole in the ground, you can dig a tank. What the heck?
Yeah. So some of these old houses, if you're still gonna fix them up, people fine do that. But otherwise, just destroy the things. Yeah. Really, really good in rural communities as well.
Yep.
Because so let's say they govern. Let's say the lines are fine, but they govern how much water you can have, right?
Right.
Because that's quite common too, right? Yeah. Especially, okay, we don't have a lot of water in this area. You can only have so much. Fine. I'll stick a trickle tank in the basement.
Yep.
And solve your problems like that.
Done. You ever heard of that? We've got problems with storm sewers. So they'll put a restrictor on the storm sewer. They'll put a tank underground to capture parking lot rainwater, and then it'll trickle through an orifice into the storm. So everybody has capacity, but not all at the same time.
Don't get me started on that, Ryan. I'll tell you. No. So we've had 2. Everything's kind of designed around these 100-year storms. Right. These theoretical 100. We've had 2 of them in Calgary in the last 20 years, right? So anyway, they're a little picky about these storms. So I'm doing that. That's still that 7-acre site I was talking about. Yeah. They made me do what's called a dry pond. So 99.99% of the time it's just grass and kids can play or whatever. But on that one massive storm, everything's designed to go there and then trickle out to the storm, right? I did an actual condo conversion, and 1974 the building was built, and I was going to put 2 new units in the basement, right? And as soon as you've opened that door with a new development permit, all the grandfathering goes away. We need this and this, right? Okay, so we have to have a storm report, right? Okay, well, why? Because we got to know how the water's flowing. Well, it's flowing the same way it did for the last 40 years since the builder's builder. Okay.
Nothing's changed. Yeah.
They made me rip up the parkade, dig a hole, and they put a 36 cubic meters tank in the thing. So basically it was 6 feet by 7 feet by 20 feet or some stupid thing, if I recall, right? It cost me $100,000 to do this whole stupid thing, right? Stupid. Anyway, so we've got a lot of that storm adjustments now too.
At what point do you say, okay, we're just going to put a dollar figure to this and just move on, versus saying it's not worth my time or my effort anymore, I'm out?
What I don't mind, I mind, but as long as you know it up front, right? What I really, really hate is when municipalities sit there and, you would think that here's the list of things that we're going to require on this development permit application. Here it is. Okay, so your team puts that together, submit the application. Well, we also need a storm report. Well, why the hell didn't you so it cost me $15,000 for that storm report. It cost me literally $100,000 to physically do it. It delayed me another 6 months, so there's carrying costs. So all in, that was like a $200,000 thing, right? Yeah. The expected profit from putting those 2 units in the basement was 150 grand.
Right. So you're backwards.
So if I'd have known that up front, I'd have just said, okay, we're just going to do lipstick and roof, screw it.
Yeah.
But I've already kicked all the people out. I've already got all the financing in place. I've already started to work on it.
You're committed.
And now I'm committed, right?
Yeah.
So you just know every day you go to work that I'm building these 2 units in the basement and I'm going to lose money on them.
Oh. Was that one of those? So that was one of those times where you wrote the check. You're like, "Ooh, live and learn on this one."
Yeah, but there's nothing you do like that. It's government too, right? Yeah. So and they don't care, and they don't know, they don't appreciate.
Yeah,
they don't get.
Private sector funds are very different than public sector funds.
Yeah,
public sector funds don't even exist. They're not even real. It's funny money. Yeah, right. Private sector is like every dollar counts.
Right, but you're the bad guy because you're trying to do these developments, right? So your question before, way back about what municipality, a lot of it is because some of these, they're just really, really anti-development because, again, the far left, corporations are evil, money's evil, revenue's evil, wealth is evil. These guys are making too damn much money, these developers, because there's that myth out there too that every development makes bazillions and development, but that's not, it's like any other investment, right? Like you're in general, if it works, you're making more money than a flip or a flip or a rental. Yeah. But there's significant risk in there too, right? Because it takes so long and things can change and all this kind of stuff, right? Yeah. So again, in and out quick, maybe just do the paperworky part. If you're a smaller investor, don't go for the home run with the full development, dirt in the ground, pipes in the ground, build roads kind of thing. Yeah. So again, there's room on this train for everybody with different experience and skill levels and money behind them. So.
Man. This has been such a great episode. Yeah. Thank you for flying in from Atlanta and wherever you come from, like Atlanta, Calgary, all this stuff to Toronto to be able to come here. Your genuine tenacity for what you do really shines through. I've enjoyed being on this side of the microphone, and hopefully you enjoyed being here too.
Like I said, I was really, really depressed because I hated it, and I'm happier now than I've been in 30 years. I can honestly say that I'm loving the show. I love talking about this stuff. You can see my innovation and my enthusiasm.
I see it firsthand.
There's no problem with mic checks and stuff because I'm not the mouse guy. Like I
love it.
I bring it, man, because I love it. Yeah.
Where can people find out more about you?
Just my website, darcymarler.com, just my name. And there's I have a webinar on a regular basis. So the first link on the site is just sign up for the webinar and figure out how this works. I've got a course, so there's information about the course on the website. I've got books on Amazon, and I'm on YouTube. I've got my own channel on YouTube, so it's not hard to find me if you're into this development stuff. If you're bored and tired and frustrated of the traditional rental and flip world, then give it a try. Give it a thought, because all these different options they're there for you.
Awesome. Thank you again for being here.
No worries. Thanks for having me. Love.
Thanks again for listening to the Highest and Best Use podcast. Reminder to sign up to the book at thehighestandbestuse.com. I'm your host, Ryan Carr, reminding you good deals are found, great deals are created. Like, share, follow, and subscribe, and we will see you on the next episode.